Welcome back to the Gus and Dave show. We are here with another episode, and we are joined by another special guest today, the one and only Quinn. You go by Quinn. Quinn is your last name.
My last name, but that's what everyone calls me.
I got you. Okay, very cool. Quinn, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so this topic is very exciting for a lot of people. A lot of homeowners have a lot of interest about, and we're going to dive, deep into some details. We're going to bring a lot of value to the viewers. And so, again, we're very, very excited to have you. Okay, Quinn, real quick before we get started with any questions, give us a little background about yourself. How long you've been doing this, and how did you get here?
So I've been in surfacing products for going on 23 years. I've been in building products for going on 35 years.
Wow.
Summer job when I was a kid was at a lumber yard, and a local lumber yard in Rockville that is now extinct. But I had an opportunity to grow there and help to run their wood treatment plant, and then I got into outside sales. Company went under, and the company that bought that company's assets had a line of laminate and polyacrylic solid surfacing. Initially, they had hired me to sort of continue what I've been doing and working with remodelers and deck builders and those sorts of folks. It came time to do that, and my boss decided I was an architectural rep. I had no idea people did this, that they promoted products to the A&D community to secure commercial specifications, but that's what I went ahead and did for Nevermar laminate and Fountainhead polyacrylic solid surfacing. And that got me into the whole world of surfacing, and I had success with that. And in fact, they wanted me to take on a large sales territory because of the success I'd had, but I'd found that the A&D world, working on things that didn't exist yet, working with architects and designers on helping them sort of realize their vision was fun. It was a lot of fun. So one thing that people say, and it sometimes can sound trite, but it's very, very true. If you love what you do, you get up every day and you love what you do, it's not work. So I had, around that same time, I had an opportunity with Wilson Art laminate and Gibraltar acrylic solid surfacing. So I took that. I was with them for 6 years, and that's a good side note. So we talk about laminate. People will often say, if you ask, what do I have in my house? Oh, I have Formica. Well, Formica is a brand.
Right.
Wilson Art, at the time I came along in 2000, was the #1 seller for 30 years in the U.S., and I don't think that's changed. So generally speaking, you probably had Wilson Art, not Formica, if you're,
right,
talking about your own laminate countertop. And another aside there is that it's often referred to as plastic lam or P-lam, certainly in my world in A&D. But most of its composition, over 90% of laminate's composition, is core craft paper, so like a grocery bag.
Wow.
So I think people sort of don't realize that, but it's still pretty tough stuff. I mean, gram for gram, laminate is as strong as structural steel. You're not going to build a building out of it, but it's pretty tough stuff. I mean, laminate in most residential settings does pretty well. It's when you get it into like a 7-Eleven and you see it's like a pattern in certain places,
right,
and it goes down to brown, you've worn off that decorative layer of paper.
Absolutely.
Is essentially what's happened. But that in a commercial application like that, where there's loads and loads of traffic and keys and money and all that sort of stuff on there, that's what's going to happen to laminate. So I went from there, from working with laminate and acrylic, and again, being very, very successful. But I saw acrylic sales where we really elevated them in 2005 and 2006. They just tanked, and people started making other choices, and really quartz was, although it had been around for about 10 years, was now really starting to take over. Silestone was the big name, if not Zodiac. Certainly in the A&D world, Zodiac had done. Zodiac had done an amazing job getting the A&D world educated on quartz and getting them using it. When I became a Silestone rep, I could count on one hand who had any kind of Silestone collateral in their office, and for that matter, any other quartz product. So that's 2006. That really just started to explode then. And that was a lot of fun, because I was able to say, hey, these folks have shown you what quartz is and got you using it, I've got another option here, and I'll tell you why I think mine's better. So that was fun. And then in that case, again, I think I'd taken it as far as I could, and I really got to learn about this product, Cambria.
Right.
American made and family owned, and they made a beautiful product. There was a need there. So I got into that and did that for 7 years while I was there. And again, I've always worked at distributor level, so I've always had these ancillary lines, different products like metal laminates and recycled glass countertops and wood tops. So we can talk about that stuff as well. But quartz now is really the big thing. And this family-owned American-made product really drew me, so I went over there. But while I was with the distributor for that product, I started working with a product called Neolith, which is large format porcelain, or what they call a sintered product. Mm-hmm. And what you have there is really a man-made stone. So what we're doing is we're doing what Mother Nature does. All natural minerals. There's no additives in that, no man-made products in that. Extreme pressure, extreme heat. So we just speed up what Mother Nature does in a controlled environment.
Wow.
So it's really cool stuff, and that's something, if you'd like, we can get into the weeds on that later. But it's an extremely versatile product.
Yeah, I would love to dive a little deeper into that.
Sure.
That's really cool.
Right. So now I'm with East West. Just recently started with East West Marble, a distributor for Viaterra, another American-made quartz product. I've only been here 4 months, but I'm loving it. It's a great company. We have almost 100,000 square feet under roof in Chantilly, and we do everything in stone from your commodity, your Ubatuba, your New Caledonia, to super exotics.
Right.
And then obviously we have the Viaterra line, and we also have our own quartz called Vision. So generally, in that case, I'm working with multi-unit companies that are doing high volume with that product.
Sure.
And that's where I am now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So obviously you guys are not the only quartz manufacturer, right?
Right.
Where do you think, or how do you feel you guys stack or compare to other many quartz manufacturers?
Yeah. So again, I've repped a few lines now,
Sure.
and all of them have their merits. The one thing from my perspective, certainly as a Cambria rep, and I did sales for Dow Tile. They have a quartz line called One Quartz. And being a Silestone rep, I was aware of Viaterra, and I hadn't really looked at it much. I generally you know your competition fairly well, but for whatever reason with that particular line, I hadn't paid a lot of attention to it. It's a beautiful product, and it's until about a month ago, it's an LG product, but there's some workings there. It's going to be different branding, but stop for a second. So you're talking about my product line versus other product lines, or how all the product lines?
I just, in general, like how you guys compare to other product lines.
So we have a product that's priced competitively. I mean,
Sure.
Everything's, when you get into sort of pricing these products, you'll find they're in the same neighborhood. So price really shouldn't be an issue. It's really down to aesthetics. And some products that are out there, some of these quartz products, are not very well done. And again, what we're seeing what they gravitate towards generally is stuff they would choose in natural stone if they could. Marble looks, because marble is not a great choice for a kitchen countertop. So we want the beauty of marble, but we want the performance of quartz. So generally we're seeing people do, long grain, broad grain Calcuttas or short grain Carreras. That's what people are really drawn to. And the product line that I rep now, they just do an incredible job with those stones. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have your display here. It's a pretty extensive display, and this is not everything. Those are your best sellers because of the space we have. We're so limited. Unfortunately, we can only have one tower. But I mean, I've seen your brochures. I've seen, what you guys offer, and it's pretty awesome stuff.
It is. It's very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Which actually, what you were just talking about leads me to my next question. So I feel like most homeowners lead towards either granite or quartz.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't hear of laminate almost ever anymore, right? And to your point, a lot of people refer to it as
Formica.
Formica. Right. So Formica or laminate, that's going away. I assume there's still a few companies that still make it.
Yeah, there are. And in fact, I think you can still like walk into a Home Depot and buy a post-form laminate top off the shelf. And what that is that's that rounded laminate top.
Sure.
You essentially cut it to the size you need and put it in your mudroom or your workshop bench or whatever it is you're using it for. But
sure.
That is probably the cheapest countertop you can buy is that post-form laminate. And there was a time when property management companies would put those into rental properties, figuring you'd be there 1 to 3 years. They'll tear it out and throw a new one in. It's no great expense to them. When you leave, they'll put another one in. So I don't think that sort of thing is even really done much anymore. Largely, they're using quartz, just because it's so easy to maintain and it stands up to most abuse. So
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Which again goes back to the question I wanted to ask you is, so between quartz and granite, what's the biggest difference or differences?
Well, obviously with granite or quartzite or dolomites, the natural stones, they're natural. So while there can be a similar look or, we know what New Caledonia or Venetian gold or what an absolute black, we know what to expect, but every slab is going to be unique. The thing about natural stone is that it naturally is porous. Some are denser than others. Tends to be darker colors. Tend to be denser. But you're going to have fissures, and certainly if there's more dramatic veining, that's also going to open it up to the possibility of an issue later on. But generally speaking, once a natural stone top is installed properly, it should perform just as well as a quartz. Right. It's really going to come down to how you're using that top, or is there an anomaly there? Is there something in that top that we just don't know about? It's going to show itself at some point. And then there's also the real danger with both those products is thermal shock. People, they'll spend a lot of money on a quartz or granite top, and they'll think they've got something impervious to damage, and they don't. You got to still have to be careful, and certainly like a very, very hot cast iron skillet goes on there, and you will probably get away with that 99 times out of 100. But what can happen is you'll get a thermal shock within the product. It's created a fissure that you don't even know about. And over time, that becomes a crack, and now you get trouble.
Sure.
But that can happen to quartz. It can happen to granite, And then generally speaking, they used to say, granite was high maintenance. You have to seal the product. And how often do you have to do that? Well, generally, a lot of these granites or a lot of these natural stones are coming with they're pre-treated. And certainly I worked for a company where we had a treatment that we did to stone, and it makes it's kind of waterproof, if you will. I don't know how long that lasts. And certainly now they're selling natural stone cleaners that have sealants in them. So from a maintenance perspective, it's a lot easier than it ever was before for natural stone. And in fact, even with those cleaners, we have to tell people that are using quartz, don't use those.
Right.
Because you can actually have buildup over time that you don't want. And as I say, you don't need it. That is one big difference, I would say, with quartz versus granite. Quartz should be as simple as warm water and soap, and it's clean. You know, in the case of granite, you may want to go that extra mile to get a cleaner that has an additive in it. So, yeah.
And Quinn, correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that you have to maintain or seal the granite more often than you do quartz.
Yeah, but it's funny. You ask a fabricator who's had a granite top in his house for 10 years, and they'll tell you, I've never sealed it.
Right.
So how much are we really having to do that?
But I mean, is that because they didn't have to, or is it because they were lazy about it, or they forgot about it, and life got in the way? Or
I think generally, if you clean, for myself, I cook and I enjoy cooking. So there's a lot of things going on in my kitchen, and I always want to clean after I'm done.
Sure.
And if you do that, you feel like you're maintaining your kitchen, then maybe you don't have to go that extra step. As I say, with cleaners now and them having sealant additives, it should be as easy as that. So, but yeah, in some cases, some people just don't bother.
I'm getting out of this is that it all depends on the application. It all depends on the use and how they use that top.
Right, and it could also be, do you have let's say like a cashmere white granite and
Right.
you're doing a lot of cooking. I mean, that's the type of thing where if you got red wine or olive oil was able to seep into it, you would see it.
Sure.
And there are ways to leach that stuff out, and over time, sometimes they can come out, but you probably want to be a little more proactive and try to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Absolutely. And how does that differ from quartz?
So with quartz, you have a continuous product. It's virtually non-porous. I think the absorption rate is something like 0.001. It's non-porous, effectively.
Right.
And what you're doing with the quartz product, and it used to be, so all your major manufacturers follow what they call the Breton process. It's the Breton is the machinery on which you make a quartz product, a certified quartz product, and then you have to follow that formula. And it used to be 93% quartz, and then the other 7% is pigment and polyester-based resin and these other additives. Then it became 93% by weight because we're getting into more of this movement and we're having to incorporate other minerals, and just having that dense quartz product isn't going to work that way. And now, with so much movement and so much of the stuff that you see, there are less and less claims of any volume of quartz versus, But here's the thing. So quartz is the hardest element in granite.
Okay.
Granite is, depending on what the granite is, there's feldspar, there's mica, there's loads of different minerals that make up that natural stone. Quartz is the hardest element in that. And quartz is the most common mineral on the planet outside of silica sand. So it's all over the place. The world's lousy with quartz.
Right.
So the question becomes, how would you improve upon granite from a performance aspect? We'll take the hardest element out, make it continuous. There you go. And you also have some control over what it's going to look like. A lot of control over that now.
Absolutely.
So what the product they're making now versus, say 10 or 15 years ago doesn't have as high a quartz content, but it's still really dense and tough stuff.
Right. I mean, you can almost custom make that stuff, right?
You almost can. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's kind of cool.
But you can, so something like that, you can do, like you could even do custom colors in quartz. I mean, it's the type of thing, I heard a rep say one time in a presentation, we can do a custom color, and then you walk out the door praying they never asked for it.
Right. It's one of those things,
but some products lend themselves more to that. It's like being a laminate rep was a lot of fun because I got to do some pretty cool things. If you, again, as a Wilsonart rep, if you've ever been in a TGI Fridays and they have red and white striped countertops. Those are Wilsonart silkscreen.
Oh wow!
I did a job in it's now where Under Armour is, the old soap factory in Baltimore.
Right.
At the time, it was just a collection of offices. There was a daycare in there, and they had this playroom with a big wall that was just, they wanted to do something special with it, and we ended up doing a panoramic view of the Inner Harbor in digital image.
Oh wow!
So it was like 10 sheets of laminate that all together, and the photographer got out in the harbor and he was checking where he was by degrees and taking these photos at different times of day, and they finally got this thing that worked. It was spectacular. It was really, really cool. So stuff like that. And then also in the polyacrylic world, I did a job in this was when I first became an A&D rep with Fountainhead. We did a job at Department of Justice where, if you've ever been in a building in DC built in the Deco period, it's lousy with this sort of sickly looking opaque glass. It's it has like a green pallor to it, but they had it in wainscoting and partitions and light fixtures all over the place. So Department of Justice, they had to stay historic on like the ground 2 floors or something, and then they were replacing that glass with another product, and we came up with a custom color that matched it, which was really, really cool. I mean, that was one of the biggest jobs I ever worked on. But the key there, like I say, I think that's the one that really hooked me into what I do, because it was so much fun to work on something that was outside the box. And with quartz, you kind of have what you have while you could do it. Sure. Actually, I should also say recently with the Neolith product, that's a product where, because we're dealing with natural pigment, natural minerals, and there is no man-made additives, you can literally recreate anything, and you could put your own image into that large format porcelain.
Wow. We
worked on prototype samples for, there's a Tennessee pink stone on the outside of the Air and Space Museum. Mm-hmm. There's about 500,000 square feet of it, and it's falling off. it's in danger of like hurting people.
Oh,
So
wow.
they have to replace it.
Sure.
So they're doing a whole new system. So the architect on the project understood what our product was, and he loved the idea because it's the same idea. This stuff can take heat like you can't believe. They're looking at ways of doing induction heating with this stuff, and I think if they ever achieve that, it's going to become the biggest thing in kitchen countertops. But it's the same principle of what they use on the outside of the space shuttle to keep it from burning up when it comes back in. It's the same idea,
Wow.
So those tiles, okay,
Sure,
so it's the same sort of idea. So he thought, wow, let's take that technology, make it look like the natural stone that's always been on the outside of this building. The docent has a story to tell about the outside of the building and then walk them in, and now we're talking about the space shuttle. So awesome idea. Plus it's extremely lightweight.
Yeah.
You need your substructure, your super system on the outside. It doesn't have to carry nearly as much weight.
Yeah.
It can be really very thin as well.
Thin, sure.
So the project architect was aware of our product and loved the idea of taking something that the technology with this product is very similar to the space shuttle, those tiles that keep it from burning up, coming back into the atmosphere, taking that technology, putting it on the outside of the Air and Space Museum, and what is the story the docents would have to tell about the exterior, and now take them inside, and now we're talking about the space shuttle. So plus it's extremely lightweight. It takes far less superstructure to hold that stuff up. And one of the keys to getting that product on the outside of the building was getting to architects and telling them, this is a new way of rain screening that isn't it's going to affect how you design the entire building in a sense. So that was pretty cool. So we actually got a piece of the exterior of the Air and Space Museum and sent it off to Spain's where the product is made.
Wow.
And they made a few attempts at it, and they had a whole plan of how they were going to make sheets so they could be cut up to look just like the existing stone that's out there, and they would get like 5 variants on each slab, and they would do 5 different slabs. So they'd have pretty good variety to do this, and we were all prepared to do it, and we would have saved them, I think, $10 million.
Wow.
But the thing about the Air and Space Museum is it's privately funded. It's not a government project.
Yep.
It's all privately funded, and they insisted on natural stone. And as much as we gave it the old college try, we couldn't put it on there. But we did. We created prototypes that looked just like that Tennessee pink. So that sort of thing you can do. So there are ways, where technology is going and where it will take us, who knows. There are even, one of the advantages for years with acrylics was you could thermoform that product, so you could take it around corners and things like that. They're actually doing that with some quartz now. Not everybody can do it, and it's very subtle bends that you're putting in there, but something we couldn't even picture, 10, 15 years ago. We are actually doing that stuff now. So yeah, generally when we talk about quartz, it is what it is, but they're still pushing boundaries and coming up with some amazing looks. So,
yeah, that's awesome. All right. Let's move on to the application process, meaning the locations and where this stuff goes.
Right.
So obviously you don't necessarily have to use this stuff on countertops, and you can use it in different application.
Sure.
What are some places?
So just about all surfacing products can be used in other places in the home, or even outside the home, but some can't. Obviously, you're not going to want to put a paper-based product in your shower, but acrylics, quartz, natural stone, and as I mentioned, the sintered products are perfect in thinner form for shower surrounds, for full height backsplash. And another thing we talked about earlier was how these products can work in concert with each other. So like wood tops have become a big thing. Often if you've got a very large kitchen with a big perimeter top of granite or quartz, let's say we have, grays and dark colors and things like that, and all very cold, you can warm it up instantly with that sort of look. Exterior kitchens are becoming extremely popular, and really the only good option we had there until the sintered products came along was granite. And granite's perfectly fine. Now in the elements, it's going to take a bit of a beating. It does need some care, or at least to be covered. But with the sintered products, as I mentioned, we're talking about building exteriors. They're UV fast. So if you want it to look like cobalt blue today and you want it to look like that 50 years from now, that's what it's going to look like. It doesn't affect it. It's extremely easy to clean. You can take graffiti off it. It's amazing stuff. I mean, So you don't have any penetration with that product. So yeah, there's also large format tile. So a lot of these products can be used as a large format tile if we want to step outside the box a bit and not just do what's cookie cutter, what's coming off the shelf at a Home Depot or a Tile Center or something like that. You can cut things up and get a little more creative.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Give me your unbiased opinion. Quartz or granite?
Well, for me, I think I have to recuse myself because for me, it's always been repping man-made products. I mean, I've always, I've worked around and with natural stone, and it can be spectacular. I mean, and I'm in our warehouse every Monday. I spend an admin day in Chantilly every Monday, and I take time to go out and walk around, see what's new, see what's come in and what's new, because there's always new stuff. We're always getting containers in, and sometimes just the majesty of what nature creates, it's incredible. But for me, I like the consistency of a man-made product, and for me, I don't know if it's because that's something I can rep, and that's something, it's a lot easier to rep a Viaterra line or a Cambria line than it is to say, specify my new Venetian gold.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because everybody's got that.
Yeah. So the way I look at it is the majority of our customers usually look for something that's maintenance free. You know, when we talk any product that we offer, really. So I'll use windows for this example. I mean, what we sell all day long is vinyl windows. Vinyl windows are maintenance free, and that's what people want. You can easily clean them. You don't have to maintain them.
Right.
And I feel like it's the same thing for countertops. I mean, people have busy lives. They have families, they have kids, they have work, they have so much going on that they want a product that they don't have to worry about remembering to seal it every 3 months or to do anything to it, really. They just, do the regular daily maintenance to it and just go on.
Right. And I think Quartz has kind of just naturally placed itself there. It's by its nature,
right.
It really is, of all your options, it's got to be the easiest to maintain and to sort of use it, clean it, not think about it. And then we're also at a point where folks do like to watch HGTV quite a bit.
They do,
and they seem to really take in. I'm one of those people that watch it sort of on the periphery. Somebody else is watching it, so I'll watch it a bit. And, I've seen them go from natural stone to quartz. I mean, there was a time they were, let me send you the granite guy, and they do the granite, but it's become quartz. And then also, because quartz is being used so much in multi-unit work, I think people are, your first place is a condo or you're renting a place and it's got quartz in it. You go to buy your home and say, well, I want what we've had. It's been great. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I did a study. The company I was working for 2 years ago, they had we weren't doing any business with builders. And there's a whole reason for that, I found out. But we chose like 10 local builders that were doing community, that size, not custom builders. Really wanted to find out what they were using and how they were using it and why they were using it. And generally speaking, across those 10 builders, I would have to say that probably 70-80% of the homes they were building were getting quartz as opposed to granite.
Wow.
And it's all just people, they're given they're given A, B, C, D, different price points, but they're also given choices of granite and quartz, and they're choosing quartz.
Sure.
Yeah.
So here we actually don't offer anything other than granite and quartz, and primarily we sell quartz. That's because what people typically, want. So what do you think the price difference is percentage-wise between the two?
Yeah, it's a tough thing to say because you have price points within, and that's another thing. I briefly, when I was a Silestone rep, Silestone was distributed through a network of large fabricators. So it was actually a fabricator that was also a distributor.
Sure.
For the better part of a year, I ran retail sales there. Saw people agonize over the smallest things. And what I would always tell people is like, look, you're agonizing over a couple $100 here, and this is something you're going to live with for years to come. And
100%.
it's going in your kitchen where you're going to entertain. You're going to be you come down from bed every morning and you're in the kitchen. That's you spend so much of your time there. Don't make a decision like that based on a couple $100.
Exactly.
Or really it's got to be what's drawing you.
Sure.
That was always my advice. And I always used to tell people, look, I don't make a commission. I'm not getting any more money for this. I have a salary.
Right.
So it's really just my advice, just pick that thing you love.
Absolutely. Which makes a lot of sense.
But if you say,
percentage wise,
yeah, you can.
I feel like some of it compares to granite.
Yeah. I mean, you can get, I suppose you can get super cheap granite, but I don't know. I mean, is it? I don't know.
So if we were to go with the average price per square foot for the granite, can you find quartz at that same price?
Sure.
Okay.
There's a big area where they overlap. Okay.
Sure.
Now, quartz can get expensive. It depends on the maker and what they're doing. Is it, something with a lot of movement with a special finish on it? It can get pricey.
Sure.
But with natural stone, you can get quite expensive.
Absolutely.
And you can spend hundreds of dollars per square foot on a Borghini or something super exotic. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
extremely possible.
Sure.
So yeah, we get into natural stone. It can there's some unknowables actually. You can get pretty high.
Absolutely. Yeah. Quinn, this has been amazing. Thank you so much again. So before we close, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Only to say that I think that the right choice for the individual is what's right for the individual. You can get into the weeds studying all these things. Quartz and granite and most of these, pretty much every product they offer for surfacing is going to serve you well. You really have to decide what works for you, what speaks to you, and how are you going to use the top in the kitchen. A couple of stories I had when I was an acrylic rep. We had a woman come out, called us out and said that her countertop was broken. It had broken, and she couldn't understand why. And we found out she was butchering meat on an acrylic top, and you can't do that. Right. Also, when I was a Wilsonart rep, I worked for a distributor who was also a cabinet distributor, and one of my colleagues had to go out to a service call. It was a Lazy Susan that had broken just under warranty. So this kitchen had been in place for about a year, and it was like a $250,000 home renovation. There's a lot, very expensive. And he tells the story of looking at the Lazy Susan, looking over to his right into the Viking oven, and it still had all of the accoutrement inside wrapped in plastic. It had never been used in a year. Wow. So, different people use kitchens different ways, and it's really going to, you have to decide what works for you. One thing we didn't talk about, there are like recycled glass countertops, which are pretty cool. And I repped a line where they actually used bottles from their local recovery area. Mm-hmm. So they would even see these ones that are greens and browns, they would change in tone from winter to summer based on people drinking beer versus wine at different, so, and they actually, they thought that was part of the charm of the product. Like you could even see bits of silk screen from a Corona label in a top.
That's super cool.
Yeah. So it's kind of a conversational thing. Is that top going to perform as well as a quartz top? Not even close.
Right.
But it's a different feel and a different vibe. And those are not cheap. Sure. But a lot of times people feel like they're doing something better for the environment. And they get that top that's got that little thing in it that they can tell the story, or a little Coca-Cola silk screen bit in there or something, and it's cool. It's kind of neat. It is. So really, it's finding what fits either your lifestyle best or what just feels good.
Absolutely, absolutely, awesome. Thank you so much, Quinn.
My pleasure.
How can people reach you?
Well, again, I'm with East West Marble, and I'm happy to help folks. I'm happy to talk about countertops. I've certainly done that in the past. I used to do a class at Montgomery College here in Rockville. I had a professor there that used to be a designer client of mine, and she had me come in a couple of times a year to talk about surfacing just like this, and I loved doing it, and she said the students loved it. So always happy to talk about these things, answer questions, but I can be reached at, my email address is Quinn at ewmarble.com. So anybody could shoot me an email there. And
that's Quinn, correct?
Correct. At ewmarble.com.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And for the viewers, if you guys have any extra or any more questions for Quinn or for myself, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments. I will be happy to get back to you on those. And we'll see you on the next one.
Right. Thank you.